Imagine you've spent, like, your entire life mastering this one specific skill.
Yeah, sacrificing absolutely everything.
Exactly. Just so you can rule the world. You've betrayed your family, you've burned down cities, you've alienated literally everyone who ever cared about you.
Right.
You finally reach the throne, you sit down, you look out over your massive empire, and you suddenly realize the power you've gained is completely, utterly empty.
It's just a totally hollow victory.
You are surrounded by absolute control, but you have never felt more alone. So today, we're doing a deep dive into a children's cartoon that, frankly, arguably teaches the philosophy of evil better than most college textbooks.
I mean, it sounds almost absurd when you frame it like that. Taking an animated series from the mid-2000s and, elevating it to the level of high philosophy.
Right, it's a kid's show on Nickelodeon.
Exactly. But when you look at how Avatar, The Last Airbender, structures its antagonists, it is doing something incredibly sophisticated. It's not just giving us bad guys to be defeated. It's building this comprehensive taxonomy of malice.
Okay, let's unpack. Because usually, when we think about stories designed for younger audiences, we expect, like, color-coded morality.
Yeah. The good guys wear calming blues and earthy greens.
And the bad guys are just draped head to toe in aggressive, spiky red. It's a total laundry basket approach to safe, binary, and you never have to guess who you're.
But this show completely upends that.
It really does. On the surface, it seems to play by the rules, but underneath, it is swimming in these deeply murky, profound water. And, based on this amazing video essay transcript by Master Samwise that we're looking at today, we are going to deconstruct this layered approach.
What's fascinating here is that a lot of people miss this entirely on their first. They see Fire Lord Ozai.
The big boss.
Right, the literal big boss at the end of the video. And they criticize him for being too basic. They call him like a cardboard cutout of pure evil.
Just a guy who wants to burn things?
Yeah. But to critique the show based solely on Ozai is to fundamentally misunderstand how it constructs its hierarchy of villainy. It introduces these distinct, graduating variations of evil right from the very beginning.
Right out of the gate. It teaches you that there is no hive mind of evil. Not all bad guys work in perfect harmony. Every antagonist has their own selfish motivations.
Which is so true to life.
Yeah. You take the first season. You start off thinking the conflicted, banished Prince Zuko is the main problem. He's chasing the Avatar. He's angry. He's shooting fire everywhere.
He's the obvious threat.
But then you meet later Admiral Zhao. And Zhao is a revelation because his specific brand of evil is inherently, almost hilariously self-defeating.
Zhao is the perfect start. If Zuko is driven by a desperate, misplaced need for his father's approval.
And a really misguided sense of honor.
Exactly. Zhao is driven entirely by petty, prideful bully. And you see the contrast perfectly illustrated in their early Agni Kai, the traditional fire duel.
Oh man, that scene, it isn't just a physical fight at all.
No, it's a clash of moral framework. Zuko actually bests Zhao. He knocks him down. He has the opening to deliver a lethal blow, but he restrains himself.
He intentionally fires his blast off to the side.
Right. He spares his opponent's life, turns his back, and just walks away.
And Zhao, in return for having his literal life spared, waits until Zuko's back is turned and goes for a cheap shot.
He attacks him from behind.
While the fight is already over, it's such a visceral, immediate indicator of who this guy is. He has absolutely zero redeeming quality. He views anyone in his way as, like, garbage to be shoved aside so he can climb the ranks of the Fire Nation Navy.
We have to give Zhao his due, though.
I mean, I guess.
Well, because if a story presents a villain who is utterly devoid of moral goodness, and they are also incompetent, they just become a cartoonish punchline, like a buffoon.
Right, like a Saturday morning cartoon villain.
Exactly. And Zhao is not a buffoon. He is highly effective. He orchestrates a massive siege that almost wipes out the entire Northern Water Tribe. He manages to physically capture the Avatar.
Slipping him out from under an impenetrable fortress, yeah.
Right, he has strategic brilliance, but his downfall has absolutely nothing to do with his military tech.
Yeah.
His downfall is purely psychological.
The Siege of the North is where this all comes to a head. Let's paint the picture of his death for everyone listening, because it is staggering to watch. The ocean itself has risen up.
The ocean spirit.
Yeah, manifesting as this massive, glowing, watery behemoth, and it grabs Zhao. It is literally dragging him down into the freezing, dark water to drown him.
It's a terrifying scene.
And Zuko, the kid that Zhao has been tormenting, belittling, and actively trying to assassinate for months, runs up to the edge of the ice. Zuko stretches out his hand to pull Zai to safety. He offers him a literal lifeline.
And look closely at Zhao's face in that moment. He looks at the hand. He looks up at Zuko. He has a choice between survival and his own ego.
And he chooses his ego.
He willfully ignores the hand, allows himself to be pulled under the ice, and dies. He prefers the cold embrace of death over the humiliation of being saved by his rival.
It is the ultimate catastrophic manifestation of hubris. It's insane. You watch that, and part of you wants to scream at the screen, like, just take the hand, you idiot.
Right. It makes no logical sense.
But that's the underlying philosophical point being. Evil, at its core, is ridiculous. It is self-defeating. All of Zhao's tactical brilliance, his ambition, his entire rising star career, it all vanishes into the freezing water because he refuses to possess a single ounce of humility.
It illustrates that a specific type of evil stems directly from a very fragile sort of pride. Zhao's pride is entirely dependent on the adulation.
He needs an audience.
He requires a title. He requires an admiral's uniform. It requires external validation. When he is denied that validation, when he is faced with the ultimate humiliation of owing his life to a teenager, he despises his pride, functions as a suicide pact. He cannot exist in a world where he is not superior.
Which makes the narrative transition so brilliant. Zhao literally burns himself out, and almost immediately the show replaces him with Princess Azula.
Oh, Azula.
And Azula isn't just a palette swap. She is fundamentally, better at being bad. It's a total, terrifying upgrade in competence.
The contrast in their methodologies is a masterclass in writing. You look at their track records side by side.
It's almost embarrassing for Zhao when you line them up. Zhao had to follow Zuko's ship around just to figure out where the Avatar might be.
And Azula
tracks the Avatar halfway across the world by examining the shed fur of his flying bison.
Right.
Zhao took a massive armada and still failed to destroy an isolated water tribe. Azula takes 2 teenage friends, infiltrates the Earth Kingdom capital of Ba Sing Se, a city that had repelled Fire Nation sieges for a century, and conquers it from the inside without a single drop of blood being spilled on the walls.
It's incredible.
Zhao temporarily captured the Avatar with a whole squad of archers. Azula goes toe-to-toe with him and actually kills him. She lands a lethal lightning strike.
And her reaction to landing that lethal strike is what separates her from Zhao forever. After she strikes the Avatar down, what does she do? She doesn't run back to her father and demand a medal.
No.
She intentionally gives all the credit for the kill to her brother.
I remember watching that and being so confused. Why would she give up the glory?
Because she's calculating multiple moves ahead. She knows that the Avatar is supposedly a reincarnating spirit, a figure of immense mystical power. She suspects he might have miraculously survived.
Oh, wow.
And if he did survive, whoever claimed the credit for killing him is going to face the absolute terrifying wrath of the Fire Lord for fail. By giving Zuko the credit, she secures Zuko's loyalty in the short term, but more importantly, she builds a perfect firewall for her.
If the Avatar comes back, Zuko takes the fall.
Exactly.
Zhao would never do. His ego physically couldn't handle letting someone else take the credit for his perceived victory. I mean, think about it. Zhao is like that toxic middle manager we've all had the misfortune of dealing with.
Oh, absolutely.
The guy who thinks leadership is just loudly stepping on everyone below you, so the executives on the top floor notice your name. He needs his name on the plaque. He needs the assigned parking spot.
While Azula is the ruthless corporate raider.
Yes, exactly. She doesn't care about the plaque on the door because she understands the entire architecture of the system. She dismantles the company flawlessly from the inside, strips it for parts, and maintains absolute control behind the scenes.
She doesn't need external validation because she already knows she owns the building.
And for everyone listening, if you think about it, which one is actually more dangerous in the real world?
Right.
The toxic middle manager or the corporate raider? The raider is infinitely more.
Because her pride is entirely internal. She isn't conceited in the fragile, defensive way Zhao is. She possesses an objective, chilling confidence in her own absolute superiority.
It's mathematical for her.
Exactly. She doesn't need you to tell her she's the best. She knows it as a mathematical fact. And from that belief stems her core philosophy. Because she is superior, she has a natural right to power. And power is simply a mechanism to exert complete control over others.
There is this scene early on when we first meet her. She's on her royal ship, and the captain is hesitating to dock because the tides and the rocks make it incredibly dangerous. He's citing basic nautical safety.
A guy like Zhao would have screamed, "I am an admiral, do as I say."
Right. He would have invoked his rank. Azula doesn't do that.
No, she weaponizes fear with clinical, psychological precision. She walks up to the captain, speaks in this incredibly calm, measured tone, and points out that the tides are just water. They don't have a mind of their own.
But she does.
But she does. She tells him that he should worry less about the tides that have already made up their mind to kill him and worry more about her because she is still mulling it over.
It is bone-chilling. She uses the threat of execution as a casual, mild negotiation tactic. She's basically saying, the ocean might kill you, but I will definitely kill you, so pick your poison.
And it works perfectly. He docks the ship.
She uses this exact same ruthless methodology of manipulating fear and leverage to bring down the walls of Ba Sing Se. She realizes the city isn't run by its figurehead king, it's run by corrupt intelligence officials. And she just plays their game of blackmail and intimidation better than they.
But this reveals the fatal flaw in her entire worldview.
Okay, lay on me.
It is highly effective in the short term. Fear gets the ship docked. Fear brings down the city. But it relies on a fundamental misunderstanding of human connection.
Right.
She stands at the head of elite armies. She leads her supposed best friends, Mei and Tai Li. She controls the Dai Lai's secret police. But despite being surrounded by all these people, she is entirely alone.
Because evil cannot love.
Yeah.
That is such a heavy, profound concept for the source text to introduce. Evil cannot will the good of another person.
It's impossible.
Azula is completely incapable of placing a friend's needs or even their basic safety above her own desires and whims. She knows she needs people. She isn't stupid. She needs tools to execute her grand plans. She never actually earns their loyalty.
It is the stark difference between transactional usefulness and genuine elite. To Azula, everyone is either an asset or a liability. There is no middle ground, and there is certainly no room.
You see that so clearly in the episode The Beat. We get this fascinating psychological study of her. The characters go on vacation. They're forced into a normal teenage social situation like a party around a bonfire.
And Azula is completely, utterly incapable.
She tries to flirt with a boy, and she ends up talking about world domination and sharp outfits that could puncture the hull of an Empire-class Fire Nation battleship.
She literally scares him away.
Yeah, her entire life has been viewed through the lens of competition, domination, and manipulation. The concept of a normal, healthy relationship where you just enjoy someone's company is mathematically impossible for her to compute.
And yet, in that same episode, there's a moment of devastating. Sitting by the fire, she admits, "My own mother thought I was a monster." She was right, of course, but it still hurt.
That line.
It's one of the only times in the entire series we see a crack in the armor. Zhao's pride was an eggshell, easily bruised, easily broken. Azula's pride is a fortress forged of iron. It is practically impenetrable from external attacks.
Which means it has to be dismantled from the inside out. And that is exactly what happens at the Boiling Rock prison. This is the absolute turning point for her character. We have to break this down.
It's a crucial scene.
Zuko is escaping the prison on a gondola over a boiling lake. Azula is about to cut the line and send him to his death. And Mai, Azula's closest friend, intervenes. She stops the guards. She saves Zuko.
And when Azula confronts her, furious and confused as to why Mai would betray her, Mai delivers the line that destroys Azula's universe.
Let's hear it.
"I love Zuko more than I fear you."
Boom. That line alone is a philosophical earthquake.
It truly is, because it disproves Azula's core operate. Everything Azula has ever is built on the premise that fear is the ultimate infallible control mechanism.
If you make someone afraid enough, they will do whatever you want. That's her whole.
But when Mai chooses love over fear, she doesn't just betray Azula politically. She proves that Azula's fundamental understanding of the universe is objective.
You can see the psychological fallout on her face. It's like a computer encountering a fatal error. All the strength, all the perfection, all the blue fire in the world falls completely short if loyalty and trust aren't there to support it. Once that fear mechanism is challenged, the illusion shatters.
If we look at the psychology of motive, it perfectly aligns with real-world organ. Fear is an extrinsic motive. It requires the person in power to
You have to constantly maintain the threat.
constantly remind people of the consequences, constantly watch your back. It is exhausting and brittle. Love, genuine loyalty, shared values, these are intrinsic. They sustain themselves. The moment the threat of fear is no longer the heaviest weight on the scale, the entire extrinsic collapse.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let me push back on. Is Azula entirely to blame for being? I mean, she is a 14-year-old girl. She is clearly the product of a brutal, militaristic system, the Fire Nation royalty, that actively rewarded this exact behavior from the moment she could walk. If her pride is made of iron, wasn't it the Fire Nation, and specifically her father Ozai, that forged it?
That is a highly perceptive point. The environment shaped without question. The sins of the father play a massive role, and Ozai's influence is the dark cloud hanging over everything. The system rewarded her cruelty.
Right.
However, Azula's willingness to internalize that sister, to treat human beings purely as disposable tools, is a choice she continues. She is presented with alternatives, like the unconditional friendship Mai and Ty Lee offer early on, and she actively chooses to weaponize it.
And when she realizes she can't control them with fear anymore, she snaps. She immediately starts banishing everyone around her. She banishes her servants because a cherry has a pit in it. She banishes her elite guards.
She spirals into a total devastating mental breakdown because she realizes she is completely.
It's tragic. tragic, honestly.
Her descent into madness is the inevitable result of a life built on treating tools. And this concept of viewing humans as instruments brings us to another facet, one that perfectly embodies the terrifying result of a system totally devoid of
A group that operates purely on cynical self-preservation.
the dialogue.
Oh man, the Dalai. The elite Earth Kingdom secret police. They are the ones who basically run Bossing Safe from the shadow. And they are terrifying precisely because they are so quiet, so rigid, and ultimately so incredibly passive.
To truly understand the horror of the Dalai, we have to bring in a heavy philosophical hitter from the source material, C.S. Lewis, specifically his book, The Screwtape Letters.
Which I love, by the way. Inserting a mid-century Christian apologist satirical novel about demons into an analysis of an animated Nickelodeon show is exactly the kind of intellectual whiplash we are here. How does Lewis connect to earthbending's secret police?
It connects beautifully through the concept of courage. Lewis asserts in The Screwtape Letters that courage is not simply one of the virtues sitting alongside honesty or compassion.
Okay.
Rather, courage is the form of every virtue at the testing, meaning the highest point of reality for any moral stance is when it is challenged. It is easy to be honest when it costs you nothing. It is easy to be merciful when you are in a position of supreme safety.
Lewis points out that Pontius Pilate was merciful right up until it became politically risky for him.
Yeah.
He wanted to spare Jesus, but the moment the crowd got angry and his own political standing was threatened, his mercy vanished.
Exact. Pilate was merciful till it became. That is the defining. If courage is the form of every virtue at its testing point, then it naturally follows that cowardice is the form of every vice at
Wow.
Every failure of morality ultimately boils down to a lack of courage to do the right thing when it.
If we look at the villains through that lens, we see cowardice everywhere. Zhao wasn't just prideful. He was so terrified of being humiliated, so cowardly about facing a life without his rank that he chose to drown.
Yes.
Azula isn't just paranoid. She is so terrified of being betrayed again that she banishes everyone who ever helped her. She lacks the courage to trust, but the Dalai are the absolute ultimate manifestation of this cowardly evil.
They are an interchangeable collection of elite earthbenders. They dress exactly the same, they move in unison, they use rock gloves to literally silence people by covering their mouth. You'd think a group like that would have this tight-knit brotherhood, highly loyal to one another, deeply committed to the ideals of their nation.
But they don't. They have absolutely zero guiding principles. They just follow whoever happens to be sitting in the big chair at that exact moment, as long as it means they get to maintain their privileged status and their comfortable lives.
There is a pivotal scene where Azula confronts their former leader, Longfeng. Longfeng thinks he controls the Dalai. He orders them to arrest Azula.
And they just stand there.
They don't move. Azula looks at him and points out exactly what the Dalai are doing. They aren't choosing a side out of loyalty. They are waiting to see how this plays out.
Ugh, oh, that phrase.
They are waiting to see who is more ruthless, who is more terrifying, so they can align themselves with the winner. Despite all their martial skill, their stealth, their intelligence gathering, they are fundamentally.
Think about how deeply relatable that is for everyone listening.
Yeah.
I mean, take the magic out of it. Look at our own lives. Look at a corporate office or a local community board or even a friend group.
It happens everywhere.
How often do we let minor injustices slide just because it's easier to keep our heads down? How often do we see someone being mistreated or a bad policy being implemented, and we just tell ourselves, let's wait and see how this plays out so we don't risk our own comfortable position?
That passive complicity is exactly what the dialogue. In philosophical terms, the text brings up Hannah Arendt, called it the banality of terrifying reality that great atrocities aren't just committed by sociopaths, but are enabled by normal who simply refuse to take a.
The Dalai are the banality of evil in Earthbender. They just go with the flow of whoever is most terrible. And as the C.S. Lewis text notes, cowardice is purely pain. It is horrible to anticipate and horrible to remember. It induces a quiet, rotting self-loathing.
And that cowardice isn't just limited to the hench. It is the ultimate death for Azula. Look at her final battle, the stunning Agni Kai against Zuko during.
The visual storytelling there is incredible. The roaring blue fire against the orange fire, the tragic music playing in the background instead of a triumphant battle theme.
It's a masterpiece of art.
For the first time in her life, Azula's immense skill, the thing she has always relied on, the thing that made her mathematically superior, proves insufficient. Zuko is calm, he is practiced, he is breathing deeply, and he is actively besting her.
She's growing frantic. Her attacks are wild, breathless, uncoordinated. And what does she do when she realizes she's losing a fair, honorable fight?
She completely abandons honor. She chooses cowardice. She sees Katara standing on the sidelines, completely defenseless, a non-combatant in this specific duel.
A bystander.
Yeah, and Azula charges up a massive bolt of lightning and shoots it directly at Katara instead of her opponent. It is a desperate, cowardly attempt to force Zuko to throw himself in the way, to sacrifice himself, because she knows she can no longer beat him directly.
It reveals that evil is not just prideful and isolating, it is fundamentally weak. It cannot stand on its own merits when challenged by grounded, courageous opponents. There's a moment earlier in the finale where Azula is staring into a mirror.
I remember that.
If she were of sound mind, this could have been a moment of profound clarity. It could have been a moment requiring immense courage to admit she was wrong, to repent, to ask for forgiveness, to finally stand up to the toxic system her father.
But she lacks that courage. The opportunity for redemption is right there, staring her in the face. But evil cannot seize it because it is inherently cowardly. It is easier to smash the mirror and succumb to madness than to do the agonizingly hard work of changing.
Precisely. Now, it is very easy for us to sit back, point fingers at the Fire Nation royalty or these corrupt Earth Kingdom secret police and say, well, they're the villains. Of course they act like that. They wear the red and the black.
It's easy to judge the obvious bad guy.
But the show doesn't let us off the hook that easily. This is where the waters get truly murky. It forces us to look at what happens when the supposed good guys, the victims of this century-long war, adopt these exact same cowardly manipulative tactics.
Which brings us to one of the most psychologically horrifying episodes in the entire run of the show, the story of Hama, the puppet.
This is a crucial pivot in the narrative. The philosophy shifts from examining the nature of the villains to examining the nature of the methods used in conflict. Hama is an elderly woman from the Southern Water Tribe. She is a prisoner of war.
And her backstory is brutal.
She was ripped from her home decades ago and suffered unimaginably in a brutal Fire Nation prison.
They kept her locked in a cage, suspended in the air, giving her barely enough water to survive, specifically to prevent her from bending. And in that unimaginable captivity, driven by desperation, she invents something horrifying.
She realizes that where there is life, there is water.
Human bodies are mostly water. So during the full moon, when a waterbender's power is at its absolute peak, she learns to reach inside the living bodies of the guards and literally take control of their blood.
Bloodbend. She puppeteers their physical movements against their will. She forces them to unlock her cage. And the author of the essay notes that this episode delivers a vital, undeniable message for its audience. The ends do not justify the means.
Just because you are on the right side of a war, or just because you have been brutally victimized, it does not automatically make your subsequent actions good. We saw a glimpse of this earlier with the character Jet, right?
Yes, the teenage freedom fighter.
He was so consumed by hatred for the Fire Nation that he was willing to flood an entire valley, wiping out a village of innocent Earth Kingdom civilians just to drown a small Fire Nation garrison.
Jet believed his righteous anger justified the mass murder of innocents. But Hama's story feels so much more visceral and intimate because of the physical violation involved in bloodbending. We cheer for her escape. We want her to be free of that horrific. But then we learn what she did after she escaped. She didn't go home. She didn't join the military to fight soldiers. She hid in a quiet Fire Nation village and started treating innocent civilians, bakers, innkeepers, people who had nothing to do with the war as toys.
She forces them to walk into a mountain prison and locks them away in the dark.
It's terrifying.
Let me push back on this, though, because I think this is a fascinating ethical debate. If you are a prisoner of war, locked in a cage, dehydrated, being tortured for years, isn't breaking the rules of engagement to survive completely understandable?
It's certainly understandable.
I mean, if a waterbender is surrounded by 6 heavily armed firebenders under a full moon and she has no other water available, is she really not justified in using bloodbending to temporarily petrify her attackers so she can escape? Is that really qualitatively different than freezing their legs in a block of ice?
It is a phenomenal question, and you are right. The instinct for survival is incredibly powerful, and the trauma completely explains why she developed the tech. In a pure, vacuum-sealed hypothetical of immediate self-defense, one might argue another martial arts.
Okay, so where's the line?
The source material and the show itself clarifies the truth. The danger isn't just the physical act, it is the psychological and spiritual toll on the user.
How so?
Think about the mechanics of what has happened. When you use bloodbending, you are literally overwriting another person's autonomy. You are reaching into their nervous system and forcing their body to move against the screaming protests of their own mind. You are reducing a living, breathing human being with free will into a mere tool to be manipulated.
Like a puppet.
Exact. And the psychological reality is that repeatedly treating human beings as objects fundamentally degrades your own sense of shared humanity. It rewires your empathy centers. You cannot consistently view people as meat puppets and still maintain a healthy, compassionate soul. It corrupts the mind of the perpetrator.
So while the trauma explains Hama's actions, it does not excuse what she became.
Exactly. She escaped. She was free. She could have traveled back to the South Pole. She could have lived out her days in peace. Or if she still wanted to fight, she could have attacked military targets. But she chose to settle in a village and play the local monk.
Targeting civilians.
She tortured civilians who had absolutely nothing to do with her imprisonment. She forced a harmless old man to walk into a cave and rot.
She let the evil that was done to her transform her into the exact thing she hated. She became the warden of her own twisted prison. It's that famous Nietzsche quote staring us right in the face. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. By adopting the cruel, dehumanizing tactics of the Fire Nation, she essentially became a spiritual extension of them.
And evil, no matter its origin, and no matter how understandable the trauma that birthed it might be, always begets more. It is contagion. The choice to use another person as an object fundamentally breaks some side.
In this concept that evil is a generational transmission of trauma, a contagion of cruelty passed from oppressor to victim, from father to son, leads us directly to the very top of the hierarchy. It brings us to the source of the show's present chaos, Fire Lord Ozai.
The big boss himself. We mentioned earlier that people criticize Basic. He just wants to burn down the world. Yeah. But the essay points out that Ozai's contribution to the show's philosophy is actually incredibly profound. He doesn't need to be a complex, conflicted anti-hero because he serves a different narrative purpose. He is the origin. He is the prime mover of the trauma in the present time. He took the generational mandate of his grandfather, Sozin, and distilled it into pure, unadulterated cruelty, which he then passed directly down to Azula.
The sins of the father weighing entirely on the shoulders of the children. Ozai represents the logical endpoint of viewing power as the ultimate good. The text makes several compelling historical and pop culture comparisons here to illustrate how this kind of supreme evil is inherently isolated.
The Lord of the Rings comparison is great. You have one Dark Lord, Sauron, sitting alone in a barren wasteland against an entire alliance of men, elves, and dwarves.
Or Star Wars. You have two Sith Lords operating in the shadows, constantly plotting against each other, versus 10,000 Jedi who are built on a community of shared.
It even references history, noting how fascist regimes inevitably turn on Germany, turning on its own allies, Russia and Italy, during World War. When your entire ideology is built on supremacy and domination, you eventually run out of enemies to conquer. And
the essay also brings up video games like Cyberpunk 2077 and BioShock. In those games, you have these incredible technologies, cybernetic implants or genetic splicing, that allow people to transcend their human limit.
Right, they become more than human.
They can perform marvels, they become stronger, faster, practically immortal. But inevitably what happens, they go insane. They turn into splicers or cyber psychos.
Yeah.
Because in the pursuit of ultimate power, they literally carve away pieces of their humanity.
Bending in the Avatar universe operates on a similar philosophical act. If you lose yourself in the wonder and destructive power of fire, the fire will... And that is the crux of Ozai's curse. When your highest good is your own strength, your own power, your own supremacy, you can never truly call another person a friend.
You can never love as humans are fundamentally meant to love.
Exactly. Think about the family dynamic. If a father demands complete, unquestioning dedication to his cause conquering the world, how could his children ever learn what love is? They were never shown a father's. They were only shown the unyielding, burning hand of... Zuko was literally scarred and banished by his own father for speaking out of turn.
Which is what makes Zuko's ultimate realization the most incredibly powerful emotional beat in the entire show. Let's trace his arc. For nearly 3 seasons, he chases the Avatar. He betrays his uncle. He helps Azula conquer Ba Sing Se.
He does terrible things.
He finally achieves everything he ever thought he wanted. He returns home a hero. He sits at his father's right hand. He's finally the perfect prince, the son his father always wanted him to be. And how does he feel when he finally arrives at that destination?
He feels sick. He is hollow. He is full of agonizing guilt and confusion. He realizes that the affection he sought from his father is entirely because his father is a monster who does...
He realizes that the approval of a tyrant demands the sacrifice of your own soul. So what does this all mean for us? It's like, imagine spending your entire adult life climbing this brutal, cutthroat corporate ladder.
Oh, this is a great analogy.
You work 80-hour weeks, you alienate your oldest friends, you miss your kids' birthdays, you step over your colleague, maybe even sabotage a few of them just to get the promotion, and you finally make it to the corner office. You're the CEO.
You have everything you wanted.
You have the massive salary, the power, the prestige. You look out the window and you suddenly realize the ladder you just spent your entire life climbing is leaning against the entirely wrong wall. You built a kingdom, but it's completely empty and you have nobody to share it with.
That is a perfect analogy for Zuko's crisis. The essay points out the ultimate tragic irony of choosing those who choose themselves repeatedly, who constantly prioritize their own ambition over the well-being of others, do not actually find themselves. They don't achieve self-actualization.
If they have the self-awareness to recognize, which Zuko thankfully does, they realize they have become empty vessels. They have scraped out their humanity to make room for power.
Evil is empty. That is the gut. If you only care about yourself, then you are all you will ever have. And eventually, staring into the dark in your royal chamber, you are going to find that you are simply not.
This highlights a core philosophical truth that the source underscores deep. Human identity cannot be founded solely on personal skills, power, or individual abilities. Yes, competence matters, but it is secondary. Humans are fundamentally, biologically, and spiritually social and relational creatures. We are made for each.
We define ourselves by our connect. Ignoring that fundamental truth is what doomed Zhao to drown in the ocean, what drove Azula to shatter mirrors in madness, and what left Ozai ruling over a kingdom of ash.
And it's what almost doomed Zuko. The essay notes this brilliant hypothetical: what if Zuko had been born a firebending prodigy? What if he was naturally as talented as Azula?
It changes everything.
He probably would have been his father's favorite. He never would have been banished. He would have turned out exactly like Azula, cold, calculating, and cruel. The only reason he didn't is because his perceived weak forced him out of that toxic environment and into the hands of other, better people.
Exactly. The intervention of others saved without the gentle, profound compassion of his mother, Ursa, embedding a sense of right and wrong in his early, and without the incredibly patient, enduring, unconditionally loving guidance of his uncle Iroh during his banishment, Zuko would have been.
Uncle Iroh is the MVP of the entire universe.
He truly is. He provides the intrinsic love that counters Ozai's Zuko's journey represents the eternal internal war of good and it's even literalized in his lineage, an amazing narrative touch. He discovers he is the great-grandson of both the evil, imperialist Fire Lord Sozin and the deeply good, spiritually balanced Avatar.
The legacy of profound good and profound evil literally share the same blood in his veins. They are always at war within him, just as those impulses are at war within all of us. And as Iroh tells him, Zuko is the only one capable of crowning the victor.
He has to choose which legacy to feed, which brings us to the emotional backbone of the entire show and the essay's final, most profound conclusion about the fundamental nature of evil. Are you ready for this? The ultimate highest truth the show imparts, the reason it is a masterclass in philosophy, is that evil will inevitably lose because evil is literally...
Now, this is a heavy philosophical concept, and we need to take a moment to unpack it clearly. The idea that evil is nothing doesn't mean it doesn't exist or doesn't cause harm. It refers to the privation theory of evil, heavily associated with ancient philosophers like Augustine of Hippo and Thomas Aquinas.
Let's break that down. What does privation of the good actually...
Think of it like thermodynamics. Cold is not a substance. You cannot capture a jar of coal. Cold is merely the absence of heat. Darkness is not a physical particle. It is simply the absence of light photon. Silence is the absence of sound.
In the exact same way, Augustine argued that evil has no ontological substance of its own. It is not a thing. Goodness is creation, structure, love, and order. Evil is simply a privation, a lack, a corruption, or an absence of that good. It is a parasite that can only exist by feeding off a healthy host.
So it's just chaos and entropy. It flares up, it causes massive destruction, which obviously causes real, tangible pain, but it eventually flames out because it cannot sustain itself. It has no roots. To do evil is to do nothing, and doing nothing. The author of the essay takes that famous quote, usually attributed to Edmund Burke, "All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing," and flips it on its head to reveal a deeper truth.
Yes. The source argues that, quote, is true, but for a much deeper, more metaphysical reason than we think. It's not just a call to political action. It's true because evil is nothing. If good men do nothing, they are actively participating in the privation of good. By withholding action, withholding love, withholding courage, they are actively allowing the void to expand. The void rushes in to fill the space where goodness...
Look at how the show frames this conceptually, from the very first episode to the very last. How does the entire epic story start? Katara, a young waterbender from a decimated tribe, finds a boy trapped in a glowing iceberg. She doesn't know who he is. Her brother warns her it could be a Fire Nation trick.
She has every reason to walk away.
She knows her village is already in danger. She's completely uncertain of the consequences, but she picks up a club and she chooses to break the ice. She chooses to act. She chooses to save a life.
And how does the series end? Aang, the boy she saved, the Avatar, is finally faced with Fire Lord Ozai. The fate of the entire world is on the line. Every past Avatar, every military general, all of Aang's friends tell him he has to kill Ozai to war. They tell him it is the only pragmatic.
But Aang makes the exact same choice Katara made on day. He refuses the path of destruction. He risks his own spirit, using an ancient, dangerous technique called energy bend to take away Ozai's bending power instead of taking his life. He chooses to spare him. He chooses preservation over annihilation.
And we have to look at the mechanics of energy bending to understand why that. The lion turtle tells Aang that to bend another's energy, your own spirit must be unbendable, or you will be corrupted and destroyed. Aang is able to strip Ozai of his power because Aang's spirit is anchored in something real, in love, in his duty to the world, in his connect friends.
Ozai's spirit, while aggressive and violent, is ultimately hollow. It is built on the privation of good. When the two clash, the solid substance of Aang's goodness overwhelms the hollow void of Ozai's evil.
This raises an incredibly important question about the nature. A depraved man, a man consumed by the emptiness and paranoia of evil, could never look at his sworn enemy life. Evil can only fight for its own miserable, cannot build, it can only destroy the present. That is why, on a long enough timeline, it will ultimately, finally lose. It has no foundation.
And the essay acknowledges a very real critique here. We might hear this analysis that good always triumphs because evil is nothingness, and think, wow, that sounds incredibly idealistic, maybe even dangerously naive. We live in a messy world.
Right, because the author insists that while good and evil are simple concepts they're agonizing.
Exactly. Concepts are simple. Reject selfish ambition, embrace familial love, choose to forgive rather than to conquer, protect the vulnerable. That isn't complicated. But as Zuko's agonizing, painful, multi-season character arc proves, putting those simple principles into practice requires immense, sustained courage. It requires the willingness to suffer for doing the right thing. It is incredibly hard.
So I want you to consider the source. Are we too cynical? We live in a world that often seems to reward the Azulas and the Zhao, at least in the short. The ruthless corporate raiders get the bonuses, the toxic politicians get...
The essay suggests that we could all stand to be a little more childlike, a little more innocent, optimistic, and hopeful, a little more certain that good will actually triumph over evil.
And there's a profound pragmatic value to that idealism. Does framing evil as a self-defeating nothingness actually give us more power to fight real-worldism? I argue it absolutely does. It strips evil of its perceived glamour and its intimidating aura. When you recognize that the toxic manager screaming in a meeting or the corrupt official manipulating the system is essentially operating from a place of profound emptiness, fragility, and cowardice, they become much less terrible. You realize that their entire structural power relies almost entirely on your...
If you refuse to grant them that fear, if you choose love and courage like Mai did at the Boiling Rock, their power evaporates. You expose them not as dark lords, but as hollow, sad dead ends.
What an incredible journey this deep dive has. We started with a supposedly simple kids' cartoon about elemental magic and flying by, and we've unpacked a literal Trojan horse of complex flaw. We've seen the fragile, self-defeating, rank-obsessed pride of Admiral Zhao. We've watched the icy, isolated perfectionism of Princess Azula crumble the moment her extrinsic control through fear was challenged by intrinsic.
We explored the terrifying, passive complicity of the Dai Li, proving that cowardice is simply virtue failing at the testing point. We navigated the deeply murky ethical waters of Hama the Puppet Master, demonstrating that trauma does not excuse cruelty and that adopting the tools of the oppressor only serves to corrupt your own soul.
We followed the generational trauma passed down by Fire Lord Ozai and experienced the profound, painful realization that achieving your goals climb the ladder only to find its leaning.
And finally, we arrived at the ultimate philosophical truth that evil is simply a privation of the good. It is a temporary, chaotic void that will always fail because it cannot connect, cannot love, and
it is remarkably applicable to everyday life. Whether you are navigating frustrating office politics where everyone acts like the Dalai, waiting to see how they play out, or you're dealing with a toxic perfectionist who uses fear like Azula, or you're just trying to figure out your own moral compass when you feel deeply wronged and want to lash out like Hama. This show provides a framework. Recognizing that true power lies in connect courageness rather than is a vital practical.
By the way, if you found this philosophical breakdown as fascinating as we did, the source author, Master Samwise, has another phenomenal video exploring the simple, enduring nature of good and evil in George R.R. Martin's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. It explores very similar themes in a vastly different setting, and it is absolutely worth your time to track down.
The wisdom found in these themes, the exploration of pride, fear, cowardice, and the privation of good, truly is time. It reminds us that knowledge, whether gleaned from an ancient philosophical text or an animated series, is most valuable when we use it to elevate our own understanding.
Absolutely. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We talked at the very beginning about how we like to sort morality into clear, color-coded laundry baskets. Good over here, bad over there. But if we accept the text's definition that evil is simply a privation of good, and that doing nothing when goodness is required is essentially participating in that evil, does true neutrality actually exist in the world?
Provocative question.
Think about it. When the stakes are real, When a friend is being belittled, when a bad policy is being enacted, is it possible to just stay out of it? Or is choosing to sit comfortably on the sidelines, much like the Dali, waiting to see how things play out, just the quietest, most basic form of villainy there is?
A profound thought to take.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep seeking the profound beta man in the seemingly simple, and we will catch you next time.